one step at a time, one day at a time. I always had a plan, and I'm still doing those sort of plans. And let's face it, life is a marathon. It's never a quick sprint, is it?
Hey everyone, and welcome back to Mocktails to Cocktails, the podcast where we mix the right ingredients to unlock your next level of success. Whether you're in your mocktail phase, just starting out, or you're already in your cocktail era and looking to level up, we're here to bring you honest conversations, actionable insights, and no fluff discussions on everything from mindset to big moves. I'm your host, Gia Rastogi, and today we've got something really special lined up. Let me ask you something. Have you ever felt like you're capable of more, but something inside you keeps holding you back? Like you're stuck in a rut, even though you know deep down you've got the potential to do so much more. We've all been there, and I get it. We all face moments of self doubt. But here's the thing, personal growth and self belief are the game changers. They don't just open doors, they give you the strength to walk through them with confidence. You see, success isn't just about the hustle, it's about the mindset shifts that happen when you stop doubting yourself and start believing in your ability to rise. Whether you're trying to land your dream job, build a business, or simply become more confident in who you are, it all starts with that inner transformation. And speaking of transformation, today's guest has been doing just that for decades. She's helped countless people turn their self doubt into unstoppable action. I'm thrilled to introduce Mary Scott, transformative confidence coach, a powerhouse who's spent over 3 decades helping people just like you and myself transform their lives and step into true greatness. Transitioning from a 20-year nursing career to founding a thriving psychotherapy practice in Melbourne, she now helps individuals embracing their wisdom, resilience, and authenticity to create a life of impact and fulfillment. As a published author and the winner of the Global Supermind Award 2024, Mary has seen it all. Her story is nothing short of inspiring, and I can't wait for you to hear how she's helped so many break through their barriers. Mary, I'm so excited to have you here today. Welcome to Mocktails to Cocktails.
Thank you, Gia. How lovely. I feel privileged that you invited me today. Thanks so much.
I'm so excited to have you here. I'm sure the listeners are going to learn so much from your journey. So, in spirit of the podcast name, Mocktails to Cocktails, Mary, if success were a drink, what would be its two main ingredients for your success?
That's an easy one, I think. For me, success is about number one, being incredibly consistent with your message, being your authentic self, and always staying focused on where you're going. So that's the first one. The second one is be persistent. Don't let people knock you out of the way. Be incredibly persistent with everything that you do. Have intentionality and clear purpose. So that's my mocktail.
Awesome. So, definitely having like that persistence. And what was the first one you mentioned again?
Consistent. You have to be consistent. You have to
Yeah.
show who you are all the time. Be authentic and, don't hide behind the door. Come out and show yourself and be yourself.
Definitely, especially being your true self. There's a lot of people who have like the fears of not being their whole self. And yeah, just that confidence again.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so like all great transformations, the path to success is never a straight line. So I'd love to know, what was that first spark for you? What drove you to start this incredible journey?
Oh my goodness, Gia, it was so long ago. You weren't even born then. But one day, because I come from New Zealand, I come from the South Island in New Zealand. One day I was in Dunedin and I was just walking along, just ruminating, I think, enjoying the day. And I thought there's got to be something more to life than this. And that
Definitely.
started from that moment. That was the spark. I thought, just a minute, there's a whole world out there of adventures, excitement. And that's when I kicked it off, got into personal development, just started to grow myself. And the journey has continued to this day.
Yes. So was that your like defining moment where you realized that helping others was your true calling?
Well, I think at that point, it was a defining moment for me to go, just a minute, I can do more. The helping others came later because being a nurse for 20 years, back then when I started nursing, they used to say that nurses were born, and they used to say I was a born nurse. And I certainly loved helping people.
Yeah.
Underneath all that, though, there was this yearning to be more, give more, do more. So that's how I transitioned into becoming a psychotherapist.
Definitely. And then what was that journey after the psychotherapy?
Pretty crazy. Becoming a psychotherapist, I first did somatic psychotherapy and went on to do Gestalt. And all of that time, part of the requirement is that you have personal therapy. And back when I started, they said, you should do personal therapy once or twice a week. And I was like, whoa, I must have a lot of work to do, because the first course was 3 years. The second one was 4 years. I was like, my gosh, I'm going to be doing therapy for years. So I think that was powerful, though, because I learned early on what it's like to sit in the other chair, if you like,
Yeah.
and also having to face my own self, look in the mirror, if you like, and had a great opportunity. And now I would never change any of that. It was a really good move to develop my inner awareness and my entire, I think I changed hugely because I discovered myself.
Yeah.
And these days I'm still becoming, it's not a full stop at the end. You don't just suddenly wake up and go, oh, I've got it all. It's something that is in progress all the time, and we're forever evolving.
Definitely. Yeah. So what would your day-to-day life look like now as a business owner?
Oh, wow. It's funny when you say that. I went right back to New Zealand then thinking, gosh, those days are so different. My day starts very early. I've always been an early bird. I like going outside when the sun is either just coming up, and I like looking, I put my head to the sun. It's just one of these things I've done for years. And I have 2 standard poodles, so they like to come out and, fossick around. So that's how I start my day, and pretty much in silence. It's either a meditation or I start my day in a very intentional manner. When I sit down here, this is my desk, I ask myself, what is your intention? And I've been doing that for years so that I get some clarity about, well, here I am. How am I lining up for the day? So it's silence, meditation, obviously, breakfast, shower, all that kind of thing. But when I sit in here, I'm very purposeful, I'm very focused, and I'm very clear about my intention for the day. And I think that's important because that helps us keep going in the direction that we want to. And
Yeah.
then I have one-on-one clients during the day and some in the evening. I'm blessed. I have a very global community, and a couple of evenings a week I run group coaching calls. And I'm just, honestly, I can't speak how grateful I am enough for the people that I have in my long-term coaching groups. I have a high-end group, which is smaller, and a group that people come into after they've usually worked with me one-on-one. And the most profound thing about that is the cheer squad mentality. So that's my days. But like I say, I'm very organized, disciplined. What happens in my calendar usually always happens. If it's there, it happens. That's the sort of person I am.
I think one of the main things that I got from like your day-to-day life, I think the main thing I learned was about knowing your attention for the day. So having that goal even just like a daily goal, like what you want to achieve. And then I loved how you said that you're like an early bird person and you have the sun hitting your face and you're just like in that moment at that time. There's nothing like disturbing you, no phone calls or anything. You're just sitting there or like walking. Do you go for a run in the morning or just like a walk or something?
No, in the morning I just stay home. I omitted to say that middle of the day, and at the moment we're having beautiful days. I take the dogs out for a run, so they run, I walk, run, do all those sorts of things because I do love the sunshine. I think it's
Definitely.
good to be out in the sun.
Yeah. So going back to your journey, you've had like three different careers. So I'm sure there was like multiple obstacles or things that blocked you, like when you were changing, especially like from those big shifts in your career. So how did you push through them? And most importantly, what were those obstacles?
Well, I think the first one that I jumped over was the transition from nurse to psychotherapist. I don't know if I'd call it an obstacle, but a very different way of life, transitioning from being an employee to being self employed. And I learned some very good lessons in those early days. One of the things that I learned back then was you have to say what you're going to do and do what you say. That's where the consistency comes in. And, to overcome those kinds of things, and there's obviously bigger obstacles I've had over the years. One of the things that's held me in good stead, and I can say this for any obstacle I've had because I've failed forward heaps of times, I'm skinned my chin, my knees, everything, you name it, I've done it, is really to back myself 100% and be clear about where I'm going. And I've never been that person, oh, I'll just give up now. In my 50s, for example, this is the best example I've got, if you like, of my tenacity and consistency and persistency, is I decided after 37 years of thinking about it, and if you know me, I'm not a runner, but I decided to run the Boston Marathon. And I thought, surely it's not that hard. And I wanted to run it for two reasons. One was when I was 18, I told my brother, because I was looking at a little black and white television and we were watching that, and I asked him what it was. And he said, oh, it's the Boston Marathon. It's the most prestigious marathon in the world. And I said to him, I'm going to do that one day. Well, you can imagine he just laughed himself silly. What are you thinking? You don't even look like a runner. So I actually had it on my goal list for all those years. Goodness knows why it took me that long. But finally, I did run the Boston Marathon, not in a spectacular time, but that was so fulfilling. It was just an amazing thing. And how I did that was one step at a time, one day at a time. I always had a plan, and I'm still doing those sort of plans. And let's face it, life is a marathon. It's never a quick sprint, is it?
Definitely. I think I just love what you're saying because it's so true that you have to have a plan every single day, especially with like not an example, but like you actually did it. Because most people normally talk about like, oh, if it's a marathon, you have to like do a little bit every day, but you've actually done that and experienced it yourself. And you also have a book about it. So just share a little bit about the book. I'd love to know more about that.
The book was just in little seed form back then when I decided to do a blog. I didn't even know what a blog was. But one of my friends said, why don't you do a blog? And I thought, why not? And so I put together this blog and I called it 26 Weeks to Boston. And I was so pleased with myself. Those times were different then to now. And my brother called me in the morning and he said, your photo's upside down. And I was like, what? Because I was so thrilled. I sent it out. But what I did was I wrote every day for 26 weeks. There's more consistency. Every day I checked in. So several years later, a friend of mine said, what have you done with that blog you wrote? And I said, oh, I've got it somewhere. And the book was born. I added to it. I called it Run, Mary, Run. You've got to see the photos. They're just outrageous. in Hawaii at 111 kilos and me at the start of the Boston Marathon, losing massive amount of weight and enjoying life and milking it for all it's worth. And that book is still on Amazon. It's a little bit repetitive because of the blog nature. And my intention was never to make a book then, but most people love it. Apart from, this will make you giggle, Gia. Someone said, I think you've used too many exclamation marks. And I just laughed, When I came back from my training, I would sit down and I would just type about the morning, the cows, who I saw, how I felt, and the book was born.
That's amazing. You really show like the consistency and the persistency as well. And then that allowed you to achieve your goal in the end. And you also mentioned when you were 18 years old, you made that goal and then you stuck to it as well, even though it took you a bit of time to achieve it in the end, but you made that goal and you achieved it later on. Like it's something similar to what I've done. So it's called the 100 list. So you write down 100 goals that you want to achieve in your lifetime. So I think I've got like 30 right now, but I do plan on firstly completing all the things in the goals. And then it's just like a little bucket list. And I really recommend for the listeners to make one of these as well, because it's just a fun little way. Like one of them is bungee jumping in New Zealand or like skydiving in Dubai. So it's just a little fun thing, but I love how you've done that as well. And it's really inspiring, your story for doing that marathon and even passing the finish line as well from your training and your consistency.
Yeah, I think, it's beautiful to hear you talk about you've got 30 things already on your bucket list. When I was your age, I don't think I even thought of it. Like I say, different times. But once I got the hang of goals, goals are such a good thing. I'm going to write them down. And I love what you're saying. Bungee jumping in New Zealand, spectacular. There's some beautiful spots there. A biased perspective, obviously, from a Kiwi. But I did some zip lining and I've done some parasailing. And that wasn't that long ago. So it took me a while. I know you won't be like this, Gia, because you're just a get up and go woman and you make things happen for yourself. And I'm very confident all those 30 things will be ticked off quite nicely, I think. And some.
Yeah, that's the plan.
As we're on the topic of actionable tips, most goals fail at the how. Wherever you're starting, my free action plan template turns intention into progress. A clear next step for today. Momentum, from small wins, quick check-ins to keep you accountable, and a plan to bounce back, even when life gets messy, so you actually finish your goals. I even use it for my own goals. Download it at classclownforwealthwizard.com/action-planner. Link in the description. Okay, now back to the conversation.
So I'm sure many of the listeners can relate to having like the fear of change or even failure. And going back to your journey, you've had those career changes. So I'm sure you might have had some moments where you question your decisions, especially in the early stages of even being self-employed. I'm sure there were moments of self-doubt. So how do you think you overcame that and then kept moving forward as well, and knowing that that was your path and you have to keep pushing?
Well, the first thing about overcoming obstacles is that you have to have a good cheer squad.
Definitely.
And that can, a circle of influence, if you like. And that can be 5 people, it can be 3 people. And one of the things about a cheer squad is that they believe in you sometimes more than you believe in yourself. I remember my psychotherapy practice in Melbourne was very successful. I ran groups in rural parts of Australia and New Zealand, mostly for women, but I got some awesome guys in there as well. And I just worked too much. For 16 years, I pedaled to the metal, going hard, and I burnt myself out. And that was a moment of reflection and, what am I going to do? So before too long, I moved states, careers, everything, shut my practice, moved to Queensland, and I thought it would be easy. Someone would want someone like me with so much experience. But after applying for 500 jobs. And yes, I did say 500 in case your listeners are wondering, what's she saying? I got 2 offers, but the bottom line was by then I was in my 50s and people didn't want, and I'll be blunt, they didn't want a woman my age with a mind of her own to suddenly employ her. You can imagine, because I've spent most of my life self-employed. So I was like, it can't be that hard, you know. But it was quite a good reality check about what happens when you start getting older and perceptions about you and who you are. And look, I was probably grateful for it because I went off doing some interesting, very different jobs. I went and worked in a detention centre in Nauru for the Australian government, all sorts of things. I did that for 3 years. That was a real growth spurt, as I call it. I had some vertical learning curves there. And it still goes back to having a very strong support system behind you. And that's how you overcome things.
That's awesome. Now, I'm sure there's been some massive wins along the way as well. So what was your first big win and how did you celebrate it?
Well, I think my first big win was when I opened a psychotherapy practice a long time ago. And because I had previously worked for a personal development company, suddenly I had this full practice. And then before too long, I would run workshops in the weekend. I'd travel all over the place because I just loved what I was doing. And I think, I'm fortunate that I've been passionate. I'm always a passionate person, but I'm passionate about what I like to do and how I like to give. And running those groups and having people's lives change. I spoke to one of my clients last year. I went to Melbourne for Generation Women, beg your pardon, and they run events every month for women in different age groups, and they invited me to speak. And I caught up with one of my clients from many years ago, and she introduced me to her friend as, this is the woman that changed my life. And it gives me goosebumps, and that's the humbling moment. And I realized a long time ago that I did have a capacity to change lives. And how did I celebrate that? I celebrated that over a good coffee with friends filled with gratitude, because I think gratitude is something that propels us forward all the time. And it was a quiet moment, when I finished that practice and I realized, wow, I'd met a lot of people. I developed some very strong connections. And I think one of the things when you get on your path and you have so much purpose, I think it's very satisfying. I've been someone who's very satisfied with my life. Do I want more? Can I create more? Absolutely, I can. But I've been very satisfied. And that celebration, I suppose it sounds a bit, what? You sat down with friends and had coffee? Well, there's other times like the Boston Marathon, getting over the line and you couldn't take the smile off my face, and going out with friends and drinking champagne and saying, whoa. And, there's different ways to celebrate, but I think the key is you must celebrate. Because when you have goals, sometimes you have a list, right? You've got a list. We've all had lists. We knock that one off, and what we do is we tick it off and we go, yes, and we go to the next one. But I think we need to pause and celebrate. And I've always been someone to celebrate. When I went parasailing in Thailand, I stood on the beach afterwards and I was like, this is magic. So we all went out to dinner, had good food, good company, good wine. And I think you must always celebrate. It doesn't have to be a big event. It can be the smallest thing, but you must celebrate.
Definitely. And it's so powerful what you said, especially about just sitting down with your friends, like even just your closest friends. It doesn't have to be a massive celebration, but just celebrating at least. And you also mentioned gratitude, which is definitely very, very powerful. So what's one of the ways you show gratitude to people in your life?
Just a few weeks ago, I was talking to my sister, and she lives in New Zealand, and she's older than me and lived a very different life to me, but I love her dearly, and her and I are very connected. And she's a bit like me. She likes surprises. So I thought, because her birthday is actually in a couple of days. And I thought, birthdays are funny. As you get older, you don't really expect that people are going to turn up with presents or flowers or whatever. And whatever comes is just like an avalanche. Oh, this is beautiful, So I thought, I'm really going to trick her. So last week I went searching for things online in New Zealand that would be fun. So, my gosh, I found this box of candy, all different candy in this box with a big bow on the top. And you know what these sort of things are like. You've created that with your sister, not candies, but awesome things, Anyway, her husband picked it up when he was going, because they live in a big apartment block, and he said, "Oh, this was down at the front desk for you." And she just started screeching, she was so excited, and she couldn't believe that I sent her candies. But that absolutely thrilled her, and I like to do little surprises like that. It's something out of the ordinary, something different, unexpected. And I think people have done that for me. I've been sent some amazing things. Open the door and, there's flowers or a box. I love receiving boxes, don't you, Gia? They're so exciting. You wonder what's in them,
Like opening up the presents, unwrapping the presents. It's so fun.
Yeah, it's good, isn't it? That's probably a bit out there, isn't it? I don't show my gratitude always in that way. I think just thanking people. I thank my hibiscus out my window every day. Today was magnificent yellow hibiscus, and I said to it before, "You're just beautiful. You're the biggest hibiscus I've had for a long time." Simple things like that. If you could hear me, you'd probably have a bit of a giggle, but I think that's what it's all about, appreciation of everything in your world. And my friends know that I have a lot of gratitude for them. We've done some miles together. They've always come up trumps. So there's lots of gratitude for them as well.
That's awesome. So even just like the gift giving, but also the smaller things is just words of appreciation. You mentioned your plant as well, but I also have a plant in my room and it's been growing a bit for a while. So I always like tell it like, "Oh my God, good job," and stuff. So just even that small, like a bit of appreciation, it makes a difference, especially with your positivity in life.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's great, and it's good you've got a plant. It's good to have that in your room. I've got a huge one here inside that if it keeps growing the way it's going, I won't be able to look out my huge window, but nonetheless, it's good. It's lovely to have live plants wherever you live and breathe and work. It's fantastic.
Yeah. So what were like some of the key mindset shifts that you had, or like the daily habits that help you succeed, even when times got tough, or just like living life?
I think I'll go back to my first comment about that question about how do I start my day. I'm a great believer in silence. We don't have much silence these days. You go to the dentist, there's the TV on the roof. You go to the doctor, there's, go on and on. It doesn't matter where you shop, there's music going. Sometimes a bit loud, you can't even talk to the people that are helping you. And it has to be a disciplined thing to seek silence. And I seek it every day. And I live here with my 2 dogs, so I can have silence, if you like, all the time. But what I mean is no mobile phones, no computer. Go outside, sit, be still, because you can never know what it is that your heart desires unless you're silent. So that's always been one of my practices, to take time out for silence and time to think. What am I thinking? A few years ago, I did a Vipassana silent retreat, and it was 10 days. You couldn't make eye contact like you and I are making now, and 2 meals a day, but complete silence and hours of meditation. And after about day 3, I was like, what's all that noise? And I realized it was my mind, I had so much chatter, absolutely cracking up about it. I was like, that's so funny, what's that noise? And it really strengthened my resolve about how important silence is. And we don't take enough time. So that's one of my big ones. The other one is that I always know where I'm going. It's something I've done for years. I left home at 15, left school at 15, took my first job at 15. I was very clear back then. I needed to have a plan, and I had a plan. And that has stood me in good stead. And I've had some rough spots, I've been bankrupt. I lost my partner 26 years, a couple of years ago. All of these things, you need to have something to keep you upright. And I haven't always been upright, There was a time going bankrupt where I found myself on the floor crying and, but it didn't ever last. It's like the grief with my partner. It doesn't last. Things pass. You find a way through. Even if it's deep breathing, you find a way through to the other side. And one of the things that I notice, and I've noticed this for a long time, that it's really important in relationships, be they intimate, friends, work colleagues, you have to be prepared to stay the course and work your way through things, particularly conflictual situations, because what I notice is people give up way too early. I think you've got to be prepared to hang in there, do the hard stuff, build your character a bit. So these are the kinds of things that I live my life by. And like I say, friends are an integral part of that. And the meditation, the silence, I like my garden. I love beauty. There's beauty in almost everything. From just looking out the window now, looking at you, your lights, your book and all sorts of things. There's so much beauty that can shine the light for us.
Before we jump in, if you're working hard but your money still feels scattered, that's why I wrote Class Clown to Wealth Wizard, a story-driven guide to money confidence, better decisions, and habits that last. Inside, you'll find plain English steps to set goals that stick, shift your mindset, and take one action this week. One reviewer called it clear, practical, and surprisingly fun. Signed copies are available now. Order them at classclowntowealthwizard.com. Keep in mind, it's not financial advice. Okay, back to the show.
Definitely. I think I'm mentioning it again, that having the intention and knowing what you're doing and why you're doing it, not just on the daily basis, as we mentioned before, but just overall as well. Like, what are you trying to do, and just following that path. But then also having that silence to just sit in your thoughts and think about your purpose and just work towards that. So what would you think is one of your most important lessons that you've learned over your many years of being self-employed, being employed, and having a business as well? What do you think is the most important lesson you've learned that shapes your success today?
Being authentic. I think being authentic means that even on a bad day, if you're having a bad day, you're having a bad day. And if you're having an awesome day, if someone asks you how you are, I'm not one that, have that, "Oh, good, thanks, how are you?" I don't have that banter. I never have. I actually pause a little and think, how am I? And I must say these days that 99%, I'm really absolutely awesome every day. But that's because, I have lived a very full life. I'm so thrilled at the life that I've had and the experiences that I've had. And I think that's something, if you like, hang your hat on, because look at you young, look what you've achieved in your young years. I think it's so exciting. The only thing about this for me is that I'd love to see you in 40 years' time, because I think you're dynamic and wonderful now. Just imagine for a minute, who you'll be becoming all the time. And that's just beautiful to me.
Definitely. Being authentic is the main message there. And especially because with the technology, the social media, having those like peer pressure, trying to be like someone else, or even trying to beat someone else, it's not always a competition with other people. It's more about just how can you make yourself better and be more authentic every single day. Just sitting in that silence, having that gratitude, looking out to the sun, saying thank you to your plants as well. Just those small little things that really can help make you who you are. So, yeah, definitely, it's very like important messages that you're sharing here. So, coming back to the listeners, and probably one of their main concerns or conflict that they may be facing is like self-doubt. It's a common barrier for everyone, especially when you're starting a new career or even just working on yourself. So, what do you think is one thing that someone can do right now to break that self doubt and start making real progress towards their authentic self? How can they make that change?
There's two things in that for me. The first one is find someone who believes in you. You will find someone. It will be someone in your family, extended family, or it could be a good friend, could be a friend that you've just met. Because once someone else believes in you, you've just got to borrow that belief for a while. And that's what you take on. They believe in me. And like I said before, mostly people believe in us way more than we do. And I think the next thing that you have to do is one step at a time. Tiny steps. Don't bite off more than you can chew. You can have the bigger vision, but in order to have the bigger vision, you have to have the small steps that create the bigger vision. And if you're borrowing someone's belief, it might be only for a short time. Like when I became a psychotherapist, I had trainers, a supervisor that believed in me. And when they said, go out and create a private practice, I was like, whoa, what? But I knew they believed in me. And I thought, well, they've all got private practices. Why can't I give it a go? So I wouldn't have been all that confident, but I definitely borrowed their belief in me, and they had the runs on the board. So that's what I think. If you're someone that really, let's say you're a serial doubter, I think find someone who believes in you, take small steps. I'm going to add a third one, because I don't care how old you are listening to this today. I want you to take a minute and write down 2 things that you've been successful at. It could be a team sport. It could be doing a half marathon. It could be winning a speech competition. It could be anything. Write it down and put it up on the wall. And every day look at it and go, oh, yes. Because that reminds you that, hey, guess what? I've done some things in my life that I'm proud of. And the list doesn't have to be huge, but it's great personal reference. It's there. So I think there's 3 things. And you know what? It's so exciting when you start to believe in yourself. You go, wow, I'm actually starting to kick some goals. And that's pretty cool.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. So I think the main thing is self-doubt is in yourself. It's like that inner conflict that you have. And then, like you mentioned, having that team around you, having that support system helping you like push forward, even when you are doubting yourself. You have someone who keeps pushing yourself, motivating you. Like for me, that would be my parents. And then, like you said, for yourself, it's like your supervisors or the people around you who love you and know that what you're doing is for the best. And they're the ones who are guiding you through it and encouraging you to keep moving, even if you're having those bad days. And I think what you also mentioned was very nice about having that list about like what you've done in your, like, not just in your life, but even on a day-to-day basis. What's something that you've done today that has really made an impact to yourself, even if it's a small thing, like, you know, just like healthy habits, like, oh, I drank 3 like bottles of water today. It's like a great achievement for me. It's an improvement for what I'm doing. Or like, oh, I went for a run. That's also an awesome thing to be doing. So having that list so you can go back to that. And like you said, the references that you have in your life, it's something that can help you boost your confidence and help you keep pushing, you keep going as well. But once someone has taken that first step, how do you think they can keep that momentum going forward?
I think that you keep building your list. That's important. And the other thing to add to that list, because the first part of the list is that you write it, I've done this, but I think when people give you accolades or they give you feedback about who you are, you add that to the list. Gia said that, I am awesome. Now, one of the things about collecting data like that, and it is data, and I encourage you to use, a real pen, not type, is that it's very hard to dismiss it, a compliment, a kind word, when it comes from someone else. When it comes for you, you can dismiss it. Oh, yeah, blah, blah. But when you've got a series of people that have said good things about you, there's not much you can say because that's the truth. That's what they've told you. So you add that to your list. And I think the important thing is you do what makes your heart sing, and you do it every day. And you start every day with what's my intention, and you stay focused on why you're doing what you're doing and what keeps you alive and well. And because one of the biggest things that I find that people do that sends them down the slippery slope is they get distracted. You mentioned a couple of things before, competing with other people. The other word I want to throw in there is comparison. Comparison's a shocker. It's, I'll never be as good as that, or they're doing better than me, or they're, got more books than me, or, what, all of that. But it's not actually about them. It's about you. And you have to stay with yourself. It's all very well. You can be inspired. And I think that competition thing, it's funny. When you mentioned it, I was thinking, gosh, I haven't thought about competition for years when I was a crazy sports person, with my hockey and my swimming and things, very team orientated, very driven for success. But it's not something I think about, but I think it's alive and well. And you have to just watch you don't get distracted into those, what should I say, notions of better than and less than. Because as soon as you say someone's better than you, you create them being better and you being less. And you don't ever want to do that. So keep your eyes forward, stay the course. What's the saying? Stay in your own lane. It works.
Definitely. And I liked what you said before, just having that, if you put that thought into your head that they're better than you, then that stops you. It limits you subconsciously even. And I actually have an example of that happened to my netball team just last weekend. We were versing a team that we had lost to beforehand. And so we were going onto the court thinking, well, this is the team that is always a struggle for us. Normally we are able to beat other teams and it's all happy. But then we were stepping onto that court and we were seeing the other team, the familiar faces, and knowing that, oh, we've lost to them before. I think the same thing's going to happen to us this time. And it's not like we were saying it out loud to each other. It was more like self-thoughts that I'm sure everyone in our team was having. But that is what made us, we weren't as competitive anymore. We were just limiting ourselves subconsciously, and I think that really pushed us back, which is hence why we lost that weekend. But then we came back at our training session and our coaches reminded us that no matter who they are, we play our best game, and we know that we work well as a team. So we just have to make sure we're always doing the things that we've learned beforehand.
I'm just thinking it's a good example, and I think those moments they're the real juicy stuff, Gia, because it's in those moments that you can take on a bigger goal, which is becoming more than you thought you could be. Great example. Imagine if you went with this thought, oh, we play so well together and we're connected and we've won so many games in the past. This is just going to be another one of those games. Changes everything, doesn't it?
Yeah. So, Mary, we've had such an inspiring conversation today. We've covered so much ground, especially about how you go around with your daily habits, sitting in the sun, having the gratitude, knowing your intention as well, but then also setting goals for yourself, like your marathon, even though it did take you a bit of time to achieve that, but it was something that you were able to achieve, and it was very powerful. Obviously, I'm sure you felt very passionate about what you were doing. You were very enthusiastic. I'm sure you were like, when you were passing that finish line, it must have been such a wonderful moment for you. So I'm so happy that we've like covered so many important things, like having, like I mentioned, the 100 list and having a goal to work towards, having an intention for every single day, and the support system as well. That's a very important one that we mentioned. And it's something that I've talked about in my book as well in chapter 9. It's about having the support system, learning from other people's mistakes, and having that to motivate you and keep moving forward. And I'm sure there's this one last question that all the listeners are burning to know the answer to. But what's your favorite drink and why?
It's a good question. I like drinking pina coladas. I love when they're particularly made from scratch, not things that you buy that are already made up. You make it yourself on a hot summer's day, and it's sweet. It's probably too sweet, to be honest, but it reminds me the smell of coconuts, the sun, the brightness of your day, and being with friends. That's why I love pina coladas. And give them a try if you haven't, but do make them yourself or get them made from scratch, because that's what it's all about. That's where the fun is, creating something cool to share and to enjoy.
That's awesome. Thank you so much for sharing your wisdom with us today. And if the viewers want to stay connected with you or learn more about your amazing work as a confidence coach, where should they find you?
Probably Facebook or LinkedIn. I'm sure Gia can drop the links to find me there. I love chatting to people. So reach out to me, say, hey, Mary, let's have a chat. And it would be my privilege and pleasure to have a conversation with you about anything that's challenging you, or if you want to share and celebrate with me.
Definitely. I'll put the links below. And I'd highly recommend checking out your amazing, incredible resources that you have and having a conversation as well. And for the listeners, I would love to hear what you resonated with most from today's episode. Drop me a DM on Instagram at ClassClown to Wealth Wizard, or leave a comment on the post related to this episode. And let's continue this conversation and continue supporting each other on our journeys of growth. Thank you for listening, and remember, the next big step towards your success starts right now. Thank you.
Thanks, Gia. You're awesome.